Los Angeles is at a crossroads. It continues to battle critical challenges on crime, housing, and affordability to little avail. It faces a daunting rebuilding project in the wake of the devastating January 2025 fires. All of this while simultaneously preparing to present itself to the globe for the 2028 Olympics. Angelenos are clearly unhappy with the current state of the city. Incumbent Mayor Karen Bass sits at a dismal 32% approval rating, and Los Angeles County showed a greater dissatisfaction with the liberal policies that have long dominated it by shifting 6 points to the right in the 2024 presidential election. This sentiment, coming at a time where Los Angeles' dominant party is flailing and desperately searching for a path forward, all but ensures that the 2026 mayoral election will be the most consequential statement Angelenos have made about the city's future in decades. While very few candidates have actually declared to run, it's clear that the battle for the future of the city will be waged between three factions, with their own power players, policy objectives, and paths to victory. The Old Guard faction. A fixture of many complaints about the direction of the liberal movement is typically exasperation at older politicians for not stepping aside to make room for younger candidates and new ideas. An element of that certainly exists in Los Angeles, but the more complicated reality in such an overwhelmingly blue constituency is that the new guard is still the old guard. Their differences don't exist much meaningfully outside of age. The top power player in the old guard is unsurprisingly Karen Bass, the incumbent mayor. It is generally represented by Bass's left-wing policy platform, which includes connecting the homeless with shelters and support services, streamlining approval for affordable housing, and support for both increased police funding and emphasis on community-based policing initiatives. However, even more progressive policies that Bass doesn't advocate for still represent a relative continuation, hence why they would be considered part of the old guard. The Rick Caruso faction. That's right, a one-man faction. Caruso narrowly lost to Bass in the 2022 mayoral election, but still remains the greatest moderate liberal presence in Los Angeles despite never having held elected office. While moderate liberals are not in short supply in the city, Caruso is a one-man faction because his wealth and local name recognition as a businessman make it so he has their slice of the electorate relatively on lock. No other moderate comes close to Caruso's influence, and the only way Caruso wouldn't be the leading moderate candidate in 2026 is if he shockingly chose not to run. Although in that scenario, it's hard to imagine Caruso still wouldn't attempt to influence the race in some fashion. Caruso's political positions emphasize rapidly building homeless shelters, increasing criminal penalties, streamlining housing development, and reducing wasteful spending. The conservative faction. While the Republican Party has been mostly locked out of power in Los Angeles since Richard Riordan exited the mayor's office in 2001, 24 years ago, there are signs that the right conservative candidate could make some noise in the 2026 mayoral election. Like I mentioned earlier, Los Angeles County shifted 6 points to the right in 2024, and Kamala Harris carried California overall by a lower margin than is typical for a Democrat. However, a more niche important stat from 2024 was that the Latino vote shifted 10 points to the right in the country overall. Considering that close to half of Angelenos are Hispanic or Latino, this rightward trend, which has reached 14 points rightward since 2016, could continue and improve the electoral prospects of conservatives in Los Angeles. Another factor for Republicans in Los Angeles would be finding the right candidate. One that comes to mind, or whose tough-on-crime platform at least could be attractive if used by a different candidate, is Nathan Hochman, who was elected Los Angeles District Attorney as an independent despite running for statewide office as a Republican not 2 years earlier. When running for statewide office, Hochman won only 33% of the vote, but he won 60% in Los Angeles last November, suggesting crime is an issue on which Republicans have an opening in Los Angeles. With about a year remaining before the 2026 mayoral election, each faction still has a few things to look out for that could help or hurt their chances. For Karen Bass and the Old Guard, a significant improvement on an issue like homelessness is unrealistic in such a short time, so a swift and noticeable response to the challenge of rebuilding the city after the fires may be the only way she can lift her electoral prospects. On the opposite end, for the Conservatives, whether or not Hochman runs for mayor, which he has not indicated he will, this is entirely based on my own speculation, his success or lack thereof in lowering crime will be critical. If Hochman succeeds, whichever Republican runs will be able to use him as an example of how conservative governance can work in LA. If he fails, however, Whatever goodwill conservatives had will likely vanish in a tough environment. A Republican candidate could also find themselves hampered by the baggage of the National Party, so whether or not Donald Trump's approval is underwater also might matter. From my perspective, Caruso is sitting in the best position of all. He sits in the political middle of Los Angeles politics, and in such a blue environment, it seems likely that voters fed up with Bass but wary of Republicans will simply gravitate to a known moderate like Caruso. But the best part of the situation is that there's no onus on him to do anything, unlike Bass or Hochman. If the other two can't prove why they should have the job, with all of his money, advertising, and name recognition, Caruso becomes the default option in the mayor's race. Just as other big cities face similar dilemmas as Los Angeles and new elections around the same time, they will all be ground zero for the battle of wills within the liberal movement, whether voters may look toward the conservatives for the first time in decades, and whether this time around the chosen path actually fixes the problems that everyone can recognize. But in this most consequential battle for the future, only time will tell if Angelenos choose wisely.